The sky above New Bazin had always been blue. Sometimes it turned orange during sunset, and sometimes gray clouds covered it before the rain came. But Kang Do-hyun had never seen the sky turn silver. He was 9 years old, and he did not understand what he was looking at. He stood at the edge of the soybean field with dirt on his knees and grass stains on his shirt. His mother would scold him later for getting so dirty. But right now, his mother was not looking at him. She was looking at the sky, and her face had gone very pale. The silver shapes came down slowly. They were huge, bigger than any building Do-hyun had ever seen. They made no sound at first. Then came a deep humming noise that made his teeth hurt and his chest feel tight. The ground shook and birds flew. Away in every direction, screaming their panic into the wind. Do-hyun felt something press against his leg. He looked down and saw Bori, his honey badger, standing close to him. Bori was small, about the size of a fat cat, with thick gray and black fur and a white stripe running down his back. His eyes were dark and shiny like wet stones. He was looking at the silver ships, and he was not afraid. Bori was never afraid of anything. Do-hyun's grandfather had given him Bori 2 years ago. His grandfather had worked at one of the last animal preserves on old Earth before moving to the colony. He had placed the small creature in Do-hyun's arms and said words the boy would never forget. "This animal will protect you. Honey badgers fear nothing. Not lions, not snakes, not even death. Keep him close, and you will always have a friend who will fight for you." At first, Do-hyun's mother had complained. Honey badgers were wild animals, she said. They were dangerous and smelly and did not belong in a house. But Bori had been different. He slept at the foot of Do-hyun's bed every night. He followed the boy everywhere like a shadow. And yes, he had bitten a neighbor's dog once, but that dog had tried to chase Do-hyun, so really, it was the dog's fault. Now Bori made a low growling sound in his throat. His small body was tense, and his claws dug into the soft earth. He could sense that something bad was coming. Do-hyun's father came running from the house. Kang Seok was a tall man with strong arms from working the farm. His face was covered in sweat, and his eyes were wide with fear. He grabbed Do-hyun's shoulder so hard it hurt. "Run," his father said. "Run to the shelter, now." Do-hyun's mother, Yuna, was already moving. She had Do-hyun's little sister Hannah in her arms. Hannah was only 4 years old, and she was crying because she did not understand what was happening. Yuna's face was calm, but her hands were shaking. The family ran toward the emergency shelter that every colony house was required to have. It was underground, built to protect against storms and earthquakes. But Do-hyun did not think it would protect against whatever was coming from those silver ships. He was right. The ships landed in the fields, crushing the soybeans his father had worked so hard to grow. Doors opened in the sides of the ships, and things came out. Do-hyun stopped running. He could not help it. He had to look. They were tall, taller than any human. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that shimmered like oil on water. They had too many arms and too many legs, and their heads were shaped like triangles with huge eyes that reflected the light. They moved in a way that made Do-hyun's stomach turn. It was wrong. Everything about them was wrong. Do-hyun's father pushed him forward. "Do not look at them. Just run." But there were too many of the creatures. They spread out across the colony like a wave. Do-hyun heard screaming from other houses. He heard strange weapons making sounds like thunder. He saw people falling and not getting up. His family almost made it to the shelter. They were so close. But then, one of the creatures appeared in front of them, blocking their path. It looked down at them with those huge, empty eyes. It made a clicking sound that might have been language. Do-hyun's father stepped in front of his family. He had no weapon. He had nothing but his bare hands and his love for his wife and children. He stood there anyway. "Go," he said without turning around. Take the children and go. But there was nowhere to go. More creatures came from behind. They were surrounded. The creature in front reached out with one of its long arms. It was reaching for Do-hyun. He did not know why it wanted him instead of the others. He did not know that the creatures, the Velith, had scanned all of them and found that he was the healthiest, the youngest, the most suitable for their studies. Bori moved before anyone else could react. The honey badger launched himself at the creature's arm. His teeth sank into the hard shell, cracking it. His claws tore at the soft flesh beneath. The creature made a horrible shrieking sound and pulled back, dark liquid dripping from its wound. More creatures came. They pulled Do-hyun's father away. They pushed his mother to the ground. Little Hana screamed and screamed. Do-hyun tried to fight, but he was just a boy. One of the creatures grabbed him easily and lifted him off the ground. Bori attacked again and again. He bit and scratched and tore. He was a small animal fighting giants, and he did not care. 3 creatures were bleeding before they finally managed to trap him in a field of glowing energy. Even then, he kept trying to bite through it. The last thing Do-hyun saw before they took him to the ship was his father's face. Seok was being held down by 2 creatures, but his eyes never left his son. His mouth formed words that Do-hyun could not hear but could understand. I will find you. Then everything went dark, and Do-hyun was taken to the stars. The Velith ship was cold and smelled like metal and something else that made Do-hyun want to vomit. He woke up on a hard surface in a room with no windows. The walls glowed with a soft blue light that came from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. His head hurt and his body felt heavy, like someone had filled his bones with sand. He sat up slowly and looked around. The room was small, maybe 3 meters on each side. There was nothing in it except the platform he was lying on and a small hole in the corner that he guessed was meant to be a toilet. The door was a solid slab of metal with no handle on the inside. Do-hyun's first thought was about Bori. Where was his honey badger? Was he hurt? Was he still alive? The boy felt tears burning in his eyes, but he forced them back. His father had always told him that crying was okay, but sometimes you needed to save your tears for later. Right now, he needed to think. He remembered the glowing field that had trapped Bori. He remembered the creatures carrying him away. He remembered his mother screaming his name. The memories hurt worse than his headache. The door slid open with a soft hissing sound. 2 Velith creatures came in. They were different from the soldiers who had captured him. These ones wore white coverings over their shells and had smaller eyes. Scientists, Do-hyun thought. The word came to him from school lessons about how different societies worked. These were the ones who studied things. Behind the scientists came a 3rd Velith. This one was bigger than the others, with a shell that was darker and covered in strange patterns. It stood straighter and moved with confidence. A leader. The leader made clicking sounds, and a small device on its chest translated the clicks into words Do-hyun could understand. The voice was flat and had no feeling in it. Human child, you will answer questions. If you cooperate, you will not be harmed. If you resist, there will be pain. Do-hyun said nothing. He just stared at the creature with eyes that showed no fear. It was a trick he had learned from watching Bori. When bigger animals threatened the honey badger, Bori never looked away. He never showed weakness. He just stared until the other animal got nervous and left. The leader tilted its triangular head. You are not frightened. Interesting. Our records say human young ones are easily scared. Where's my friend? Do-hyun asked. His voice came out stronger than he expected. Where's Bori? The leader made a sound that might have been laughter. The small creature? It has been taken to our specimen laboratory. It caused significant damage during capture. 4 of my soldiers required medical treatment. The creature leaned closer. It will be studied, dissected, We wish to understand why such a small thing fights so hard. Something changed in Dohyun's chest. The sadness and fear that had been sitting there turned into something else. Something hot and sharp. He had never felt true anger before. Not like this. This was the kind of anger that could burn down worlds. "If you hurt Bori," Dohyun said quietly, "I will make you sorry." The leader stared at him for a long moment. Then it made that laughing sound again. A threat from a child. How amusing. "Take him to the examination room." The scientists grabbed Do-hyun's arms and pulled him off the platform. He did not fight. There was no point in fighting now. He was small and weak, and they were big and strong. But honey badgers did not win by being big. They won by being patient, by waiting for the right moment, by never giving up. Do-hyun would wait. And when his chance came, he would take it. Meanwhile, in another part of the ship, Bori was having a very bad day. The Velith scientist named Veth had been studying alien life forms for over 50 cycles. She had seen creatures from 100 different worlds. She had dissected things with 10 legs, things with no legs, things that could change their shape, and things that existed partly in dimensions she could not see. Nothing had ever given her trouble until now. The honey badger sat in a containment unit made of reinforced crystal. It should have been impossible to break. The creature had already cracked it in 3 places by throwing itself against the walls over and over again. Veth checked her instruments again. The readings made no sense. The creature's body was producing stress hormones at levels that should have killed it hours ago. Its heart was beating so fast that it should have exploded. Its brain activity showed nothing but pure, concentrated rage. "Remarkable," Veth said to her assistant. "It has not stopped fighting since we contained it. Does it not know that resistance is pointless?" Her assistant, a younger Velith named Keth, looked at the creature with what might have been nervousness. Perhaps it does know. Perhaps it simply does not care. Veth tried to sedate Bori by filling the containment unit with sleeping gas. The honey badger held its breath for 4 minutes, then simply started breathing again and kept attacking the walls. Its body seemed to process the sedative like it was nothing. She tried to restrain it with mechanical arms that extended from the ceiling. Bori bit through the first one in 30 seconds. The second one he twisted until the metal screamed and broke. The third one managed to grab him, but he simply went limp, slipped through its grip like water through fingers, and immediately attacked again. "The skin," Veth said, suddenly understanding. "The skin is loose. It can rotate inside its own body." She had never seen anything like it. Evolution had created the perfect fighting machine, an animal that felt no fear, ignored pain, never tired, and could not be held down. And humans kept these things as pets. Veth made a note in her research file. Terran species continues to surprise. Recommend increased caution when dealing with human-associated. Fauna. She did not know that this recommendation would come too late. In his cell, Do-hyun closed his eyes and thought about Bori. He could feel something strange, like a warmth in his chest that pulsed in a rhythm that was not his own heartbeat. It was Bori. He was sure of it. The connection between them was not something the Velith could understand or measure with their instruments. It was something older than science, older than space travel, older than the stars themselves. It was love. And it was coming for them. Do-hyun smiled in the darkness of his cell. The Velith had made a mistake by separating them. They would learn this soon. They would learn it in blood. "I am coming, Bori," he whispered. "Wait for me." Somewhere in the ship, a honey badger paused in its endless assault on the containment unit. Its dark eyes seemed to focus on something far away. Then it resumed its attack with even greater fury. The hunt was on. Scientist Veth made a mistake on the 3rd day. She opened the containment unit. She had good reasons. The honey badger had not eaten or slept since its capture. By all medical knowledge, it should have been dead or at least too weak to move. But when she scanned it, the creature's body showed no signs of exhaustion. It sat in the corner of the unit, watching her with those dark, shiny eyes that never blinked. VETH wanted to insert a monitoring device under its skin. She needed to understand how its body worked. The sedatives had failed. The restraints had failed. So she decided to use a paralysis field instead. It was a technology that froze all muscle movement. Nothing had ever escaped a paralysis field. She activated the field and opened the containment unit. The honey badger lay perfectly still on the floor. Veth reached in with her surgical tools. Feeling confident for the first time in days. She did not know that honey badgers can hold their breath and slow their heart rate almost to nothing. She did not know that Bori had learned this trick while hunting snakes in burrows back on Earth. She did not know that the creature had been waiting for exactly this moment. The paralysis field flickered for just half a second. A minor power fluctuation that happened on all ships. It was nothing important. It was enough. Bori's teeth closed on Veth's arm before she could scream. He bit down with a force that cracked her shell and tore through the soft tissue beneath. Then he let go, dropped to the floor, and was gone. Veth screamed then, holding her ruined arm. Her assistant Keth hit the alarm button, but by the time security arrived, the honey badger had disappeared into a ventilation shaft. The opening was barely 15 centimeters wide. Keth had not even considered it as an escape route. Nothing dangerous could fit through such a small space. He was wrong. Bori moved through the ventilation system like he was born for it. The shafts twisted and turned through the entire ship, connecting every room and every level. They were dark and tight, perfect for a creature that had evolved to fight in underground tunnels. The Veleth tried everything to catch him. They sent small robots into the vents. Bori destroyed them. They filled sections of the ventilation system with poison gas. Bori found another route. They tried to seal off the shafts with emergency barriers. Bori chewed through them. On the first day of freedom, Bori killed 3 crew members. They were engineers working on a power relay when he dropped from the ceiling onto the first one's head. By the time the other 2 understood what was happening, it was too late. On the second day, he found the water recycling system. Honey badgers mark their territory with a special gland that produces a smell so terrible it can make other animals physically sick. Bori used this gland generously. The ship's water supply became undrinkable. Half the crew started vomiting. On the third day, he found the food storage. He did not eat much himself, but he tore open every container, scattered everything across the floor, and marked it all with his scent. The Veleth would starve before they could eat any of it. The ship's leader, Overseer Keth, called an emergency meeting. His commanders stood around the circular table, and none of them could meet his eyes. They were the Veleth Collective, conquerors of 12 star systems. They were being defeated by an animal that weighed less than 15 kilograms. How is this possible? Overseer Keth demanded. We have the most advanced technology in the galaxy. We have captured thousands of species. Why can we not stop one small creature? One of his commanders spoke carefully. Overseer, the creature does not behave like any animal in our records. It shows no fear. It does not stop to eat or sleep. It attacks even when outnumbered. Our soldiers are afraid to enter certain sections of the ship. Afraid? Keth's voice was sharp. We are Veleth. We do not feel fear. But that was not quite true anymore. The crew had started telling stories about the creature in the vents. They said it could be anywhere. They said it watched from the darkness with eyes that glowed like demons from their old legends. They said it was not an animal at all, but a weapon the humans had created to destroy them. Doyun knew none of this. He sat in his cell, counting the hours, feeling Bori getting closer. The warmth in his chest grew stronger every day. The guards who brought his food looked nervous. They jumped at small sounds. One of them had a bandage on his face where 4 parallel cuts marked his cheek. What happened to him? Do-hyun asked the other guard, pointing at the injury. The guard did not answer. He did not need to. Do-hyun already knew. On the 4th night, Do-hyun woke to a scratching sound above his head. He looked up at the ventilation grate in the ceiling. 2 dark eyes looked back at him. Bori, he whispered. The honey badger had chewed through the metal grate. It should have been impossible. The grate was made of hardened alloy designed to resist cutting tools. But Bori's teeth had worn it down slowly, patiently. Over hours of constant gnawing, the grate fell to the floor with a clang. Bori dropped through the opening and landed on the platform next to Do-hyun. The boy grabbed his friend and held him tight. Bori's fur was dirty and matted with dried blood that was not his own. He smelled terrible, like musk and death and victory. Do-hyun did not care. He buried his face in that dirty fur and cried for the first time since his capture. "Good boy," he whispered. Good boy." Bori made a soft rumbling sound in his throat. It was the closest thing to a purr that honey badgers could manage. He licked the tears from Do-hyun's face with his rough tongue. They stayed like that for several minutes. Boy and beast reunited at last. But they both knew this was not the end. They were still trapped on the ship, far from home, surrounded by enemies. Do-hyun looked at the cell door. It was still locked from the outside. But Bori had gotten in through the vents. Maybe they could get out the same way. "Can you show me the way?" Do-hyun asked. Bori climbed back up toward the ventilation opening and looked back at the boy. His eyes said, "Follow me." Do-hyun was not as small as Bori, and the vents were tight and dark. But he was thin for his age, and desperation made him flexible. He squeezed through openings that should have been too small, following the sound of Bori's claws ahead of him. Behind them, an alarm started to blare. The guards had discovered the empty cell. The hunt had become a chase. But now the hunters were the ones being hunted. And somewhere in the distance, coming through the stars at maximum speed, the United Earth Defense Fleet had received a distress signal. Help was on the way, but Do-hyun and Bori could not wait for help. They had to survive long enough to be rescued. And on a ship full of angry aliens who wanted them dead, survival meant fighting. Fortunately, fighting was what honey badgers did best. Commander Park Min-ji stood on the bridge of the HFY, watching the stars streak past as her ship traveled faster than light. She was a small woman with gray in her hair and scars on her hands. Her eyes had the look of someone who had seen terrible things and learned to live with them. 5 years ago, the Velith had attacked a colony called New Hope. Min-ji's son had been there, visiting his grandmother. He was 6 years old. The Velith took 200 humans from that colony for their experiments. None of them ever came back. Min-ji had been a cargo ship captain then. She had been nowhere near New Hope when the attack happened. By the time she heard the news, there was nothing left to save. She never found out what happened to her son. The not knowing was the worst part. Some nights, she dreamed that he was still alive somewhere, calling for her. Other nights, she dreamed that he was dead, and that was almost easier. After New Hope, she had joined the United Earth Defense Fleet. She trained harder than anyone. She fought in every battle she could find. She rose through the ranks until they gave her command of the HFY, one of the most powerful warships humanity had ever built. And she made a promise to herself. She would never let the Velith take another human child. Now, a distress signal had come from New Bizin. The message was broken and unclear. But Min-ji understood the important parts. Velith ships. Attack. Children taken. How long until we reach them? She asked her navigation officer. 6 hours, Commander. The Veloth ship is trying to jump to hyperspace, but our scouts have damaged their engines. They are not going anywhere. Minji nodded. 6 hours was too long. Anything could happen in 6 hours. But it was the best they could do. Space was big, and even the fastest ships needed time. Tell the crew to prepare for combat, she said, and contact the other ships in the fleet. I want everyone ready. The Heta was not alone. 3 other warships flew beside it, the Baiko, the Chiangryong, and the Jindo. Together, they carried over 2,000 soldiers and enough weapons to burn a small moon. The Veloth did not know it yet, but they had started a fight they could not win. On New Bizin, Kang Seok had spent every hour since the attack working. He had organized the surviving colonists. He had repaired the communication equipment that the Veloth had damaged. He had sent the distress signal that reached Commander Park, and he had refused to sleep, refused to eat, refused to rest until he knew his son was safe. His wife Yuna stood beside him now, watching the sky. Little Hana slept in a bed behind them, tired from crying. The family had lost almost everything in the attack. Their home was burned. Their crops were destroyed. But they were still alive, and they still had each other. The fleet is coming, Seok said. Commander Park herself is leading it. Yuna closed her eyes. Do you think Do-Yoon is still alive? It was the question neither of them wanted to ask. The Veloth were known for their experiments. They took living creatures apart to see how they worked. The thought of their son on one of those examination tables was too horrible to imagine. He is alive, Seok said. His voice was firm. And he has Bori with him. Yuna almost laughed. That smelly animal. I was always trying to get rid of him. That smelly animal has probably given the Veloth more trouble than our entire colony. Seok put his arm around his wife. Our son is strong. He gets it from you. Yuna leaned against him. He gets it from his father. They stood together and waited for the stars to bring back their child. On the Veloth ship, chaos had taken over. The human child and his creature had escaped from the cell. They were somewhere in the ship, moving through the ventilation system like ghosts. Every few hours, another crew member was found injured or dead. The smell of the honey badger's musk had spread to every deck. Soldiers jumped at shadows and shot at nothing. Overseer Keth had lost control, and he knew it. His career was over. The Veloth Collective did not accept failure. When this mission ended, he would be called before the High Council to answer for everything. He would be lucky if they only removed him from command. He might be executed, but first he had to survive. The human ships were coming. His engineers had managed to repair some of the engine damage, but not enough to escape. He would have to fight. Overseer, one of his officers said, "We are receiving a transmission from the human fleet." Put it through. The screen flickered and a human woman appeared. She was small and old by Veloth standards, but her eyes were hard and cold. She spoke in Galactic Common, and her voice did not shake. "This is Commander Park Minji of the United Earth Defense Fleet. You have taken one of our children. Return him unharmed, and we will grant you mercy. Refuse, and we will destroy your ship with everyone on it. You have 1 hour to decide." The transmission ended. Kef stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Then he turned to his officers. "Prepare the human child. We will use him as a negotiating tool. If the humans want him back, they will have to agree to our terms." It was a reasonable plan. The Veloth had used hostages before. Humans were emotional creatures who placed great value on their young. Surely, they would rather negotiate than risk killing the very child they came to save. Keth did not understand humans. He did not understand that Commander Park had already decided what would happen. He did not understand that the fleet's targeting systems were locked on to the Veloth ship and would fire the moment the hour was up. Hostage or no hostage, he did not understand. that humans did not negotiate with kidnappers, and he definitely did not understand what was waiting for his soldiers when they went to capture the child. The squad of 6 Velith found Do-Hyun in his storage room on deck 4. The boy was sitting in the middle of the floor, his knees pulled up to his chest. He looked scared and helpless. The soldiers felt relieved. Finally, something was going right. "Human child," the squad leader said. "Come with us. Do not resist." Do-Hyun looked up at them. His face was dirty and his clothes were torn, but his eyes were calm. "Too calm, okay," he said quietly. "But I should warn you about something." "Warn us?" "Warn us about what?" Do-Hyun smiled. It was a small, cold smile that looked wrong on a child's face. "Bori gets angry when strangers touch me." The squad leader did not have time to ask who Bori was. The honey badger dropped from a shelf above him and landed on his face. The screaming started immediately. Do-Hyun did not watch. He had seen enough violence in the past few days to last a lifetime. Instead, he moved to the door and waited. Bori would be finished soon. By the time the door opened and his friend emerged, none of the 6 soldiers would ever walk again. The boy and his honey badger continued through the ship, getting closer to the bridge with every step. They did not know that rescue was coming. They did not know that Commander Park's ships were already in position. They only knew that they had to keep moving, keep fighting, keep surviving. And that was exactly what they intended to do. The hour passed. Overseer Keth had failed to produce the human child, and Commander Park did not ask twice. The Hedda fired first. A beam of concentrated light struck the Velith ship's weapons array and melted it to slag. The other warships followed, targeting the engines, the shields, and the communication systems. In less than 3 minutes, the enemy vessel was crippled and drifting. "Prepare boarding teams," Commander Park ordered. "We are going to get that child." Her soldiers assembled in the shuttle bay. They wore heavy armor and carried the best weapons humanity could build. Each of them had volunteered for this mission. Each of them knew the risks. And each of them would rather die than leave a human child in alien hands. Park led them herself. Some commanders stayed on the bridge where it was safe. Park was not that kind of commander. She had promised herself years ago that she would bring home every child she could. This one would not be different. The shuttles launched toward the damaged Velith ship. Enemy fire came at them, but the Hita's gunners shot down every missile and beam. The shuttles reached the ship's hull and attached with magnetic locks. Cutting tools burned through the metal, and the boarding parties entered. "Move fast," Park said into her radio. "Find the child. Kill anyone who gets in your way." The Velith soldiers fought back, but they were already broken. Days of terror had stolen their courage. The honey badger in the vents had become a monster in their minds, and now human soldiers were everywhere, with fire in their eyes and weapons that never missed. Some Velith threw down their weapons and surrendered. Others ran and hid. Very few stood their ground, and they did not stand for long. Park led her team toward the detention level where the child was supposed to be held. She moved through corridors that smelled of musk and fear. She saw the bodies of Velith who had died from wounds too small to be caused by human weapons. She saw claw marks on walls and doors, signs of a battle that had been fought long before her arrival. "Commander," one of her soldiers said, "the cell is empty." The child escaped. Park felt something cold in her chest. An escaped prisoner on a damaged ship could be anywhere. He could be hurt. He could be dead. He could be hiding in some corner where they would never find him. Then she heard something. A sound that did not belong on a spaceship. A sound she had only heard once before. In a wildlife documentary, her son used to love watching Dot. It was the growl of a honey badger. Park followed the sound. It led her up 2 levels and through a maze of hallways. More Velith bodies along the way. More claw marks. More blood that did not belong to humans. She found them on the bridge. Overseer Keth was backed into a corner, holding a weapon that shook in his grip. Two of his officers lay dead on the floor behind him. Standing between him and the main console was a small human boy with dirty clothes and tired eyes. And sitting at the boy's feet, covered in blood that was not its own, was the strangest, fiercest creature Park had ever seen. The honey badger looked at her. Its dark eyes showed no fear, no exhaustion, nothing but readiness to fight again if necessary. The boy looked at her too, and for a moment she saw her son in his face. Not the same child, but the same strength, the same courage, the same refusal to give up. "It is okay," Park said softly. "I am here to take you home." Do-hyun's legs gave out. He had been running on fear and anger for days, and now it all drained away at once. Park caught him before he hit the floor. The honey badger made a warning sound, but then seemed to understand that this human was not a threat. It sat back and watched, ready to act if needed. "Bori," Do-hyun whispered. "His name is Bori. He saved me." Park looked at the small creature, then at the bodies scattered around the bridge. The honey badger had done all this. A single animal, protecting its human, had caused more damage to a Velith ship than some military strikes. She made a mental note to recommend that the UEDF study these animals more closely. They might be more valuable than weapons. "Come on," she said, lifting Do-hyun in her arms. "Your parents are waiting." They left Overseer Keth cowering in his corner. Other soldiers would deal with him. Park had more important things to do. The shuttle ride back to the Heta was quiet. Do-hyun fell asleep in Park's arms, finally safe enough to rest. Bori sat beside them, his eyes never closing, always watching for danger. The soldiers looked at the honey badger with respect and maybe a little fear. They had seen what it could do. News of the rescue spread quickly. By the time the fleet returned to New Bizen, half the galaxy knew what had happened. A human child and his pet had single-handedly terrorized a Velith warship. The story was too strange to be believed, but too well documented to be denied. Kang Seok was waiting when the shuttle landed. Yuna stood beside him with Hana in her arms. The family reunited in a storm of tears and laughter and tight embraces. Bori was squeezed and petted until he made annoyed sounds and wiggled free. Little Hana refused to let go of her brother's hand. Commander Park watched from a distance. She thought about her own son, lost so many years ago. She thought about all the children who had been taken and never returned. She thought about the ones who were still out there somewhere, waiting to be rescued. Then she turned away and walked back to her ship. There was more work to do. 3 months later, the Velith Collective added new entries to their species database. Under humans, they wrote, "Threat level upgraded to extreme. Their bond with other creatures creates unexpected combat advantages. Do not underestimate. Do not provoke. Do not, under any circumstances, harm their young." Under honey badger, they wrote, "Threat level catastrophic. Immune to fear. Immune to pain. Immune to sedation. Can destroy ship infrastructure. Bonds with human children. Recommended action. Avoid at all costs. And deep in the records, someone added a note that was not official policy, but spread through the Velith military anyway. If you see a human child with a small creature beside them, do not approach. Do not threaten. Do not even look at them. Just walk away and pretend you never saw them. It is safer that way. Back on New Bizen, the Kang family rebuilt their farm. The soybeans grew back. The house was repaired. Life slowly returned to normal. But some things had changed forever. Do-hyun was different now. He was still a 9-year-old boy who liked to play in the fields and get dirt on his clothes. But there was something in his eyes that had not been there before. He had seen the darkness of the universe, and he had survived it. and Bori was always with him. The honey badger followed the boy everywhere, just as he always had. But the other children in the colony treated him with more respect now. Their parents had told them the story of what Bori had done on the Velith ship. They understood that the funny-looking animal with the bad smell was not just a pet. He was a warrior. Commander Park visited the colony once, a year after the rescue. She brought a medal for Doyen and a special collar for Bori with the UEDF symbol on it. Bori tried to eat the collar, but eventually allowed it to be put on him. "What will you do when you grow up?" Park asked Duhai, and the boy thought about it. He looked at Bori, then at the stars that were just beginning to show in the evening sky. "I want to help people," he said. "Like you helped me." Park smiled. It was the first real smile she had allowed herself in a long time. "Then you will need a ship," she said, "and a crew, and maybe a few more honey badgers." Dohin laughed. Even Bori seemed to make a sound that might have been approval. And somewhere in the galaxy, on ships and stations and planets far from Earth, other creatures learned the lesson that the Velith had learned the hard way. Humans were not alone. They came with friends, and their friends fought just as hard as they did, with the same stubborn refusal to quit, the same fierce love, the same willingness to face any enemy, no matter the odds. That was the true strength of humanity. Not their technology or their numbers or their weapons, but their hearts, which had room for other species, and the bonds they formed that could survive anything, even the cold darkness between the stars. The end.